I want to welcome everyone to this important webinar. For how long now have we been seeing this all-out attack on the very existence of Palestinians, day in and day out? We recoil in horror as we see it continue. And yet it goes on. This attack, of course, is carried out with weapons. And these weapons are mostly made in the United States. They are made by companies with significant operations going on in Massachusetts. They are made by companies that make money off these weapons. They are made by companies that the Massachusetts State Employees Pension Fund invests in to make money. That money, some of it, is made off the bodies of children in Palestine that are being ripped apart by those very weapons. Tonight, our goal is to empower ourselves to understand, first of all, what weapons are being used, to understand who makes those weapons for money, and to find out what we can do to oppose and eventually to stop those weapons from being used to destroy life in Palestine. Another batch of those weapons is ready to go. Senator Sanders has tried to stop them by putting in a joint resolution of disapproval. Massachusetts Peace Action is trying to develop support among our senators to co-sign and to support that joint resolution of disapproval, because those weapons that are going to be shipped that Senator Sanders is trying to stop have the names of Palestinian men, women, and children all written all over them. And that's why they must be stopped. To help us get our bearings in this whole area of weapons and war and genocide and money and investments, we're very fortunate to have with us tonight Noam Perry. Noam is American Friends Service Committee Economic Activism Associate. He works for National American Friends Service Committee. And Noam is one of the creators of the project called Investigate, AFSC's project that aims to expose corporate involvement in oppressive state violence and to promote standards for corporate and social responsibility and respect for human rights. Investigate carries on research efforts focused on corporations involved in incarceration and immigrant detention in the border industries, but for our main focus tonight, in the Israeli occupation and attack presently going on. In the process of doing this work for I'm not sure how many years now, Noam has developed an expertise so that he has become a consultant to divestment campaigns across the country and can support those investment campaigns with research and hard data. Just before I let Noam take this over, I do want to show people something that we have in Massachusetts. And that is a bill that has been introduced into the state legislature in Massachusetts. Not too many co-signers so far, but we're still working on it. This is an act relative to pension divestment from companies providing military equipment to the state of Israel. It's a very short bill. Within 60 days of the effective date of this act, the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board, that is the board that controls the Massachusetts, a huge pension plan, the Massachusetts State Pension Plan. Within 60 days, that board shall divest from the Pension Reserves Investment Trust Fund all stocks, securities, and other obligations of any company selling weapons to the state of Israel, unless that company announces within 30 days of the effective date of this act that it will not renew or enter new contracts for weapon sales to the state of Israel. The bill is very simple, very clear, very easy for people to understand. It means that the Massachusetts pension plan will no longer make money off of the killing going on in Palestine. And that's why it can be a very useful tool to us if we are trying to stop that war. But to give us specific information and his own thoughts on these issues and advice, I want to turn it over now to Noam Perry. And thank you, Noam, for very much for being with us tonight. We had you on, I think, about a year ago. And of course, the situation has only gotten more atrocious since then. But we've also learned a bunch of things since then. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me again. It's great to be here and see all of you taking time off of your busy schedules to learn more about this. And I'll start sharing my screen. Let me know if it doesn't work. Like Paul said, this is in a way a continuation of or a follow-up to a webinar that we did, me and my two colleagues at AFSC who are working on this. We did it in February of last year, 2024. So if you want more background, you can always go. I think it's all recorded and online. You can revisit that. But I'll start with introducing my organization. I work for the American Friends Service Committee, like Paul said. My project specifically is called the Action Center for Corporate Accountability. And we specialize in divestment and in corporate research for action. But AFSC is a large organization that does many things. Not all of them, or actually most of them, are not specific to Palestine. But we do have other Palestine work. We do humanitarian work in Palestine, including in Gaza on the ground. We have two full-time staff people in Gaza who have survived. Lost many family members, lost their homes, and we used to have an office there. The office is ruined, of course, as most of the Gaza Strip. But the work continues. And we have other staff at AFSC working on issues related to Palestine, doing advocacy, doing activism, and we have weekly action hours every Friday that you are welcome to join if you find this. It's always inspiring. We take action together. We call our senators and representatives. We learn together, and it's a great forum. So I invite you all. This is the resource that Paul mentioned, Investigate. It is a database that we created specifically for the purpose of informing people and investors and activists that are targeting institutions on companies involved in the Israeli occupation and apartheid and in the US massive mass incarceration industry and border and surveillance industries. So you can just go there, you can search for a specific company, or if you are in a divestment campaign, we have specific tools for you. You can upload a list of companies, for example, and it will tell you which companies are on the divestment shortlist. And if you're invested in different types of funds, mutual funds, ETFs, like the state pension fund, for example, you can also look that up and see what it hides inside of it. So like I said, we did a webinar on the weapons used in Gaza more than a year ago because we started a very intensive research project to document and follow all of the weapons that we see being used in Gaza. And I just want to say this project continues. This is from today. This is what I woke up to. Someone sent this to me. It was a video on Instagram, and I was asked to identify what weapon this is. Unfortunately, I've seen many photos like this in the last year and a half, so I can, with a pretty high confidence, say what this is. It's a bomb called Spice 2000. The guidance system is made in Israel by Rafael, which is owned by the state of Israel. But the body of the bomb itself is made in the United States. It's looking at the size. Of course, we can never say for sure with a picture like this, but it looks to me like it's a 2,000-pound bomb. And so we keep adding to our database all these instances. We keep track of what we know on this page. In addition to Investigate, so you can also see specifically the companies that we've seen involved in the genocide since October of 2023. You can see them all here. As you can see, a lot of these are what are considered traditional weapons manufacturers. So we have all the large weapons manufacturers and smaller ones, including Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, L3Harris, all of those. But this list also includes other companies that are not strictly weapons manufacturers, some vehicle makers like Ford or Toyota, Caterpillar, of course, which makes heavy machinery and bulldozers. We have drone manufacturers. We have some software companies here that provide Israel with tools for surveillance and artificial intelligence. And that's all here. And the weapons continue to flow. As Paul mentioned, we have some motions in Congress, in the Senate, and in the House trying to block some of these weapon sales. These are the latest ones. These are the Senate resolutions, and we have comparable ones in the House that were announced yesterday. Some of these weapons, all of these weapons on this list are weapons that the Trump administration recently, in the last couple of months, said it would send to Israel in the very short term. And all of them have been heavily used in the genocide in Gaza. Some of these are weapons that the Biden administration specifically did not send to Israel, specifically the D9 bulldozers by Caterpillar and the 2,000-pound bombs. Famously, the Biden administration refused to send those. And these are all going now. And I hope you'll join us and call your senators and representatives to try to get them blocked. We need as many votes as we can to show that we're building support for this idea that weapons cannot be sent to any country and that this is US law. We cannot send weapons to countries that violate international humanitarian law. and to countries that block humanitarian assistance. This is US law, and we are violating it for a year and a half now. Again, as Paul mentioned, Paul did a great intro. Many of these companies that make these weapons have a large presence in Massachusetts. I know most of you are from Massachusetts, maybe some of you are not. But this is a map that we didn't, this is not our resource. This is a resource made by someone else, and the link is here for you to follow it if you want. And this only covers the largest 7 military contractors in the United States. So again, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, companies of that caliber and size, which means that it leaves out a lot. But these are all the sites that we know of where weapons are produced by these companies. And of course, it leaves out a lot. For example, I know that in Lynn, Massachusetts, there's a factory by GE Aerospace, what used to be General Electric, that makes that produces most of the engines for warfighters, warplanes, and helicopters, attack helicopters like this Apache helicopter, which are also used in Gaza all the time. Israel uses them, of course, the United States uses them. But these are all weapons of mass destruction. And again, GE Aerospace, you know, it doesn't make bombs, but and I'm not an aviation engineer, but I'm told that you can't make a helicopter without an engine. So this is an essential component that every fighter jet, every helicopter has to have, otherwise it can't move, literally. And so for our purposes, it's definitely considered a weapon system. And this particular factory in Lynn was named as one of the contractors in previous foreign military sales to Israel. If you don't know, foreign military sales is the main way that the United States sends weapons to Israel. And these are paid for by us, by US taxpayers. This is a gift by the American people to the government of Israel, a gift of weapons that Israel has to buy in the United States and then can do with them whatever they want. So what do we do about that? And this brings us to the question of divestment. We've been working on this for years. And you know, we see language like the language that was shared in the beginning of the Massachusetts bill, targeting the pension fund, the state pension fund. And these different bills and different motions and different resolutions, they have different language. And that's okay. And it's important to remember that the ask in general is universal and uniform, regardless of the institution that we are targeting. It can be a state pension fund, it can be a university endowment, it can be a union fund, it can be a city operational budget. The call is universal, and the call was issued almost 20 years ago. We're running up to the 20-year anniversary in the summer. And the call is to do whatever we can to get civil society organizations to impose broad boycotts and divestment initiatives similar to those applied to South Africa. In other words, the call in general is to do whatever we can to cut institutional ties to Israeli apartheid. Now we can add genocide, settler colonialism, military occupation, and so forth. That's the ask. And it's the same ask from any institution, but it looks differently, of course, depending on the ties. So each institution is required and asked to examine its own ties to apartheid, genocide, settler colonialism, and military occupation, and then to figure out how to sever these ties, which can be difficult. But the first step is to try, is to make a public commitment that we are going to try. This is another one of our resources. You have the link here at the bottom. Uh, it's a general resource about divestment. So at the top of this page includes general divestment language, like the one I just said. It has some recorded webinars. We have webinars specific to campus divestment and webinars specific to city level divestments. And an invitation to join us at office hours. We started BDS office hours, my colleagues and I at AFSC, twice a week, where we just, it's an open space for activists who are engaged in divestment campaigns. It's not for the general public. It's for specifically people who are doing divestment campaigns or planning divestment campaigns to come and get advice or, get us to read something. And if you are engaged in a divestment campaign, we really want you to come and we want to work with you. And the last thing on this page, and this is the screenshot here, is a list of everything that has happened in the last year and a half since January. We've had many divestment wins, many of them unprecedented. And you can see here 3 examples that each look completely different because it's a different institution. One is a pride festival, one is a county in Ohio, and one is a pension fund, again, in Massachusetts. And they took different actions because their ties to apartheid and genocide are different. And so what they need to do is different. But the general ask is always the same. Now, why do we work on divestment to begin with, and why do we think it's impactful? First of all, it's one of the most powerful tools we have to create a narrative shift and really a shift in the way people think about Israel and Palestine. We want divestment from apartheid and genocide to become mainstream. That's our medium-term goal. The short-term goal is to have a lot more wins like these. The medium-term goal is to just make it mainstream, just like you cannot be a progressive institution or even a liberal institution in the United States and be invested in the fossil fuel industry or in private prisons, to say that you can also not be a progressive or liberal institution if you invest in genocide, apartheid, and military occupation. We know that the companies don't like it. We know because we hear from them. They don't like being on the divestment shortlist. They don't like it when there's a headline saying that such and such university sold stocks of Lockheed Martin. They don't like it. They spend quite a lot of time and money and effort to try to create a better image for themselves. And we also know for a fact that Israel and its allies and proxies in the United States and that the United States government don't like it. And we see that evidenced in the multiple anti-BDS bills that exist or laws that exist. And we see that in the work of organizations such as the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, that has its own project trying to combat divestment in our work. And I deliberately didn't say here, and I want to clarify that we don't expect divestment to have a financial impact on the companies in the short term. When we divest, when we sell stocks, even if it's a lot, companies don't feel it, and Israel doesn't feel it. So the goal is not to financially harm the companies. There is a financial harm, and it's in the reputational realm. And basically, we're creating risk. We're creating more risk factors for these companies. But there's no real financial impact in the short term. When we sell, it's not a punishment. It's not something that the companies feel immediately. And I'll go back to that point in a few minutes. The second big reason why we think divestment is worthwhile is because we win. It's one of the only ways in our movement, in the Palestine Solidarity, Palestinian rights movement, where we can actually win. Using divestment, we get to bring the struggle to places where we have power or places where we can build more power. So it's really important that we do the work in the national work in Congress and invoke institutions like the UN and do all of that work. But divestment allows us to bring this work to everywhere. It can be our union, a business that we have connections to, our city, our university, the places that are close to home. If they have investments in the stock market, they all have to review them periodically. And each and every one of them can become a target. And we want to target them. We want to target them. We want to pick the places where we can win and go after them and get the wins that we can. And the third reason, of course, is what I mentioned already before, is that this is what Palestinians have been asking us, So it's really important that we work on a ceasefire, and it's really important that we do all the other things that we do. And it's also important to do what we were asked by the most impacted people. The BDS call was issued by the largest ever coalition of Palestinians, Palestinian civil society organizations, including the largest unions, many political parties, Palestinians in Palestine, Palestinians in the diaspora, and we owe it to them to at least try the best as we can. But what does it mean as we plan and strategize around divestment campaigns? It means that we should always prioritize winning over having some financial impact, because financial impact is really difficult to achieve, at least at this moment. And so we work with many activist groups on a daily basis, and some of them think that in order to be impactful, they need to target the largest investors, the largest pension fund in the state, or the largest universities. And actually, what we always advise them is to think about places where they can win. It's not necessarily the largest institution or the largest endowment or the largest investor, but it's the place where we have an in, when we have some kind of power, where we have some kind of leverage, and we want to take these wins as much as we can, even if the institution is not invested in any company that is on the divestment list. We still wanted to make a public commitment that it will stay clean. That's also important. That's a part of normalizing divestment and mainstreaming divestment. We want to prioritize divestment over disclosure. It's sometimes really hard for institutions to disclose what they're invested in, and it's much easier for them to make that public commitment that we're after. We want to prioritize our research efforts on research that would help us win on things like power mapping, things like researching the people who make decisions and the process. And we don't need to do typically any research on the investments themselves, right? We get a lot of questions from people who want to target their city, for example, and they say, oh, we need to examine the investments and they're not public, so we need to file a Freedom of Information request. That is not important. We don't need that to achieve a win. And sometimes the best way to get disclosure actually is to get a public commitment. Once you get a public commitment that the institution wants to divest, then they will start a process of figuring it out. And if they include us, and hopefully they will, then we get to learn a lot about the investments, and maybe we get a say about what that means. We always want to prioritize language about investment criteria and not limit ourselves to targeting one company or even a list of companies. So we have a divestment list, we have the BDS divestment list, and we can use it. But the ask is not to divest from the divestment list. The ask is to divest from apartheid, genocide, military occupation, and so forth. Maybe the most important thing, we have to develop an inside and outside strategy. This is how every single divestment win has happened. We are very good with the outside strategy, typically. Outside strategy meaning making public appeals, petitions, protests, standing up with signs, asking for divestment. And we need to develop that inside muscle. The inside muscle looks like figuring out who the decision makers are in the university or the pension fund or the union that you're targeting. figuring out what they care about, trying to reach them through circles of acquaintances, starting to have a relationship with them, going, if they're elected officials, of course, talking to them, seeing what their priorities are, asking them what they would need from us. What do they think the outside strategy should look like that would help them move things on the inside? And of course, come to our office hours. Don't do this alone. You're a part of a large movement. If you're in a divestment campaign, or if you're planning or thinking of a divestment campaign, don't reinvent the wheel. There are many around you that are doing very similar work, and you can learn from them. And we would like to help you get connected and to help you from our knowledge of what has worked in other places and what hasn't worked in other places. I'll stop with sharing these three things that are specific to Massachusetts. One, Paul has already mentioned in the beginning, there's the state initiative, and we definitely desperately need all of your help to help it get as much support as we can. I just visited the Boston area last week, so this is something I learned. There's a group in Somerville that is working to add to the November ballot a divestment initiative, and they can also use your help. So they need thousands of signatures to get it on the ballot, and they've already started this process, so we have to win. We have to make it happen. And if you want to help, get connected with Somerville for Palestine, and they will appreciate it a lot. And there are many, many campaigns and many things happening in universities in the Boston area and all throughout Massachusetts. I'll name just one that I learned about last week, that Mass Art in Boston actually made a public declaration to align, or a public commitment to align its investments with its mission, which is typically how divestment starts. And that's already a win. And now the students are pushing them to figure out what that means. And we're waiting to see what it means for them, for that institution. And there are many other initiatives happening in many other colleges and universities. Some could use our help, and some honestly are managing by themselves. So I'll stop here because I want to leave a lot of time for questions.
Okay, well, thank
Paul,
you.
back to you.
Thanks very much, Noam. So we're going to take questions through the process of asking people to use the React menu item at the bottom of your screen and to use the raise hand function. And I will call on you. And when you're called on, Cole, our master technician tonight, will unmute you and let you ask your question. So you can start raising those hands now, because right now we are going to make an appeal. We're going to make an appeal that you get involved in this Massachusetts divestment campaign to get our state to divest from what's happening in Gaza, to divest from the genocide going on. And Cole, I don't know, could you put up, do you have the link to that form available to put up? Basically, we're going to ask people to sign up, to say that you're willing to do something to support this campaign. The campaign will obviously focus to a great extent on the bill in the state legislature, which has now been put into the Public Service Committee. And so there'll be that type of work in terms of talking with representatives and senators, trying to get them to support it and work it through that way. But this campaign is not focused only, or even necessarily primarily, on this particular bill. The campaign is to encourage divestment throughout Massachusetts and to provide community support for people at schools, at hospitals, and all that are working on these divestment campaigns to provide support for those individual efforts so that they're not just isolated efforts, but that people are aware that they're going on, and therefore others can draw inspiration from them to begin their own campaigns. So this would be our goal, is to both provide support for these campaigns, especially right now at universities. If you look at all the students who are being expelled from school or taken away or whatever, they are always asking for divestment. And so this is an area that really those committing the genocide are really determined to stamp out. And so this is why it's so important that these efforts continue and that they grow. Meanwhile, those individual efforts, which hopefully we will be able to provide people support for and political cover for, they in turn can support the statewide campaign around this bill, which would divest from companies, divest the state pension plan. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. I mean, we have this list of investments in General Dynamics, RTX, Boeing, you know, a whole bunches of them, Lockheed, of course. We can point out to people if they're interested just and say, what do you mean? I don't believe that the state is really invested in this stuff. We can just show them the sheet, which is directly from the board that runs the investment portfolio. So I think, yeah, Cole has put it in there. Is he in the chat under Cole Harrison, mapper to everyone? If people could click on that sign up sheet, all that it means is that you would want to be connected to the campaign. It might mean you set up an appointment with your representative to try to get them to be a co-host. It might mean that you show up when students at Harvard or MIT are doing an action around their divestment campaign. It could mean a whole bunch of different things, but it means that you are in. You are in on this. And as busy as we all are, hopefully we can all find something that we can do to support this campaign, because it could really be very, very significant as time goes on. So please, if you can click on that and start filling out that form, if you're willing now to sign up, that would be wonderful. There'll be meetings coming up. You don't have to go, but you're certainly welcome. There'll be strategizing coming up. This gives us something in addition to focusing on Congress, which we continue to do, but sometimes that can get pretty frustrating. And here we're going directly at the companies making the weapons that are engaging in this killing at this very moment. So let's see. Let me just see if we have any other. Are there any questions? We have a few questions already. Okay, let's take Pam Chamberlain. Would you like to ask your question? Cole, could you unmute Pam?
Hi there. Thank you very much for organizing this, Paul, and thanks for being there, Noam. I'm a retired state worker, and I asked my pension fund to tell me about investments in Israel bonds. These are, there's a movement among conservative legislators to invest directly in the government of Israel as if you were investing in a local community bond fund or bond campaign. And I'd like to know from Noam, is this part of the work that you're doing now? It was just how I entered into thinking about this rather than through weapons themselves, because I heard somewhere that there was this conservative campaign to promote direct public funding from pension funds to go directly to Israel.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Absolutely. We are deeply involved in the campaign targeting Israel bonds. It's a part of the divestment ask everywhere. It's a part of the divestment platform. So again, The divestment ask should not be about specific investments. It should not be about just Israel bonds or just this company or another company. It should be about the principle. The principle is that we don't want to be invested in apartheid, genocide, military occupation, and settler colonialism. And of course, at the bare minimum, it means we should not be invested in Israel bonds. Israel bonds is the way that the Israeli government fundraises from individuals in the United States, but also large institutions. We have major unions in the United States that are invested in Israel bonds. We have counties and cities and states that are invested in Israel bonds. Typically, like you said, Pam, these are conservative places. And so sometimes they are not the lowest hanging fruits, right? Meaning that I would be surprised if a large institution in Massachusetts is invested in Israel bonds, and if it is, then it can be a fantastic target. And the ask from it should not be just to divest from Israel bonds. The ask should be to divest from everything that is linked directly to genocide, apartheid, and military occupation.
Mhm.
And we've had several wins with Israel bonds. We've had, if you go back to that list that I shared in the beginning, I think we have two counties, maybe both in Ohio, where the county had purchased Israel bonds years ago, and when they expired, decided not to renew them. And this is how it would work with all bonds. You typically don't
Mhm.
sell them like you sell stocks.
Mhm.
You just wait for them to mature. That's the technical term. And then if you do nothing, then they typically renew automatically. But if you say that you don't want to be invested in them anymore, then you're not invested in them anymore. And we've had several wins with that. And that's why it's really important to talk about the principle.
Mhm.
Because these are, when we ask institutions to change their investment policy, this is not just about their current investments. This is about all future transactions. So, of course, part of the implementation should be to look right now at the portfolio and see how it might violate a policy that says we don't want to be invested in genocide and apartheid, but it also carries out into the future. So whatever you achieve today, and again, that's why even if the portfolio right now is clean, let's say it doesn't have anything with Israel bonds or any companies on the divestment shortlist, we still want the policy in place so that next year when the treasurer changes or when something happens, they don't, if today they're not invested in Raytheon, tomorrow they can be. And
Mm.
and that's why it's about policy and it's about principle. It's not about one particular investment like Israel bonds. But the
Good.
headline, of
Thank you.
course, would be that they're invested in Israel, that they divested from Israel bonds.
Right, right. And that's the case for the Massachusetts State Pension Fund. There are current and new bonds from the past 2 years.
So
Okay, thanks very
So
much.
Pam, before you go, are you saying that you are aware of the Massachusetts State Pension Plan investing in Israel bonds?
Yes, I wrote to them and asked the question, do you invest in Israel bonds? And they sent me back the information.
If we could get that from you,
I'd be glad to send it to
hey,
you.
yeah, I really appreciate that because we have
Okay.
the stock listings, but we don't have the bonds. That would be very important for us to find out. Okay, well, thank you, Pam. Let's go to Louise Coleman.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Well, one of the things that I was just thinking about, it's a little bit roundabout, is that a lot of the weapons are sent to Israel via Ireland. And that there's an interesting article in the Irish Times today that there's a growing movement in Ireland protesting having their airport used as a way station for the bombs going to Israel. And it sounds like it's growing in the discontent there is growing in it's just getting more and more vocal. So of course that has interesting ties back to Boston, being an Irish city. So I just thought it was interesting that sometimes things go around and around before they really surface. But it was a really interesting article. I sent it to Paul. But that the Irish are saying that they don't want to be complicit. They don't want to have their infrastructure used to send horrible weaponry to kill little kids. So it's becoming more known about what's happening and how to stop him. So
Yeah.
thank you for all you're doing.
Okay, well, thank you,
Yeah,
Louise.
Europe in general, not just Ireland, Europe in general has better regulations and better accountability mechanisms that enable us to either block shipments or have some kind of accountability. Also, not just about weapons shipments. Ireland was at the forefront of divesting from companies that are involved in the illegal settlement industry in the West Bank and boycotting settlement products. So there's a much richer tradition in Europe than in the United States. So we need to do our work here to at some point get to where they are.
Right. But at least, there are allies that are aware, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Louise.
Thank
Let's go to Dan McLaughlin.
Paul, could I ask you, skipping a couple of people, is there a reason for that? Moji, I was
I'm just
actually the first
I'm just
person.
going by the list here.
You're
I do
missing
want
it.
to get Dan on because he's doing this campaign on general dynamics.
All right,
and,
let's go to Dan, but you did miss two people, so I'll call up Dan now.
Good.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be short. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Cole. My quick question: I really have tried to go through the pension fund managers in the state of Massachusetts. I was looking for language that that Noam's talking about as far as whether or not it's any clear principles within the or ethics within the state investment policy, and I could find nothing. And I just wanted to encourage people who may have gone through the kind of boilerplate that's in there, whether they've found things that might suggest points of principle that those of us who are going to meet with state representatives can be made to understand that those are points of principle that are literally articulated in the pension fund management. So if anybody has any insight into that, I would appreciate it, because we want to give the representatives that we meet with our backing for what we're asking them to do. We want to give them strength in choosing to join us. So that's it. Thanks.
Absolutely. And
Thanks,
this would be a worthwhile research effort. I know from Paul, and I haven't seen the language, but I also haven't looked for it very carefully, that PRIM, we're talking about PRIM, the pension fund of the state, that it divested from tobacco at some point.
Right.
And so from a talking point standpoint and also from a technical standpoint, the easiest thing for them is to give equal treatment to weapons, saying we divested from tobacco because the state of Massachusetts thinks tobacco is harmful for people. And just as much as tobacco, weapons are also harmful for people, and therefore we're also divesting from them. And if they already have an existing mechanism through which they implement that divestment from tobacco, they could just lump in weapons. It's not that simple, but it's probably the easiest thing they could do, and it can generate a win. If it can generate a win, let's do it.
There is
Go ahead.
if there's existing language for a repeatedly introduced bill to divest from gun and ammunition manufacturers here, which may give us an opportunity to really link the languages there. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dan. And let's go to Moji Yaga.
Hi, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Noam. My other favorite Noam in the world is called Noam Chomsky, who is an encourager of me to do a number of things, including the Chambers of Compassion. And I am from Iran. I'm a Muslim, a Sufi Muslim, and what we are talking about, the more, if you will, moral or philosophical issue here is to delegitimize barbarism. I have been part of two divestment campaigns. One at my undergraduate university, McGill University. I was part of Divest McGill out of South Africa. And then at the University of Arizona, where I was a visiting scholar and had a project called Project on Culture and Conflict, I was part of a divestment campaign to divest Arizona pension plans and other investments out of tobacco companies. We are talking about delegitimizing barbarism, and what Israel is doing is anti-Semitic. So we are fighting anti-Semitism. And that would be something that I would suggest if people argue and bring that cudgel, try say you are being anti-Semitic by being against Israel, you say no. Israel, by what it is doing, by weaponizing the Holocaust, and in order to justify a genocide, is the most anti-Semitic entity in the history of Judaism. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for what you're doing, Noam.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Moji.
Myself, I 100% agree with you, and I can say Noam Chomsky is my favorite Noam.
Yeah, so I think we have time for one more question, and that would be Jeff Conlon. Jeff?
Okay, I have a question. I'm an alumni at Clark here in Worcester, and I have a Teamsters pension. So I'm wondering, where do I start? I mean, I feel like I'm just a nobody walking in off the street. Why would anybody at the pension fund want to listen to me? Why would anybody at Clark want to listen to me? I wouldn't know where to begin. So if there could be some education on where to begin.
Great question.
The whole bit.
So you took the first step, which is being here and joining putting your name in the petition so that you are captured and can be called on for support. And maybe your role at this point is to work on the state bill. I don't know. You need to figure out where your where your efforts can be most useful.
Okay.
I don't think I've heard anything about Clark College. Maybe I'm forgetting. Clark University or college?
Clark University.
Clark University. So if there are students working on divestment or that have called for divestment, if there's a way for you to reach them and say, hey, I'm an alum, how can I help?
I don't think there are at this point,
yeah.
but yeah.
So you can't, I agree with you. As an alum, a single person working on your own, you don't have much power in this system. So you can call, if they call you to ask for donations like they do, you can give them a little bit of a hard time and say, I'm not going to donate until this or that. But we don't expect that to have a large impact. So the goal is to organize. The goal is to see where can you find people like you who are interested and who are willing to put some time and effort into this. It's a waste of our time if we just call by ourselves. These are not democratic institutions. Pension funds are not democratic institutions. Endowments are not democratic institutions. So we have to organize to figure out where we can have an impact and how we can move them. And if we think they're not movable, let's not waste our time on them. Or if we think we are too few people to impact Clark University, let's not waste our time. But trying to connect with others in in your union, or if you're a person of faith and you're church or other institution has investments, or your city. There are organizers everywhere, and our goal is to find each other and to organize where we think we can have an impact.
Yeah.
That was very helpful.
And
Thank
Jeff, there is a very good active group in the Worcester area. And you know, if you want, I won't put you on a spot, but if you'd like, we can put you in touch with them that are working on Gaza quite a bit. And would
I think
be
I'm
happy.
already a part of that
Oh,
group.
you probably are. Okay, but also if you know any other alum from Clark who
Yeah.
share your view of things, to get a group of alumni, alumni to get in touch with the college and say, hey, you know, here's a little petition that we've been circulating. We're very concerned that you might be invested in in these companies, and we think this would be a terrific move you could make, given what's going on in the world, for Clark to get out there and say, hey, we're against genocide and we're not going to carry stocks in our portfolio, that are killing people. So they'd be happy to talk to you more about that as time goes on, but if you're connected with that group, that's great. But think about the alumni situation. And I'm sure there are students at Clark University. That's always been a very activist campus that are concerned about this. And you might run across them. I'm sure that they would love to have the help of the community as opposed to trying to pull this off all by themselves. So I think I want to thank everybody, encourage everyone to consider getting involved. We need people to, set up meetings with your representatives, get 2 or 3 friends to go do it, or if you can't do that, make a phone call and say, hey, I know about this bill. I want you to be a co-sponsor. There's all kinds of work to be done that way, or we need people to come out when the students at MIT are trying to do their divestment work, which they're trying to do, and they're under a heck of a lot of pressure to give up on it. They really need the support of people in the community who are not as vulnerable as these colleges are. You know that in Cambridge now, these Harvard and all these are going to have received letters from Trump telling them they got to shape up and crack down on their students. We have to line up with those students now, and divestment campaigns are a good format to use for joint community and student and faculty efforts. That could really build community around these issues and maybe even accomplish something. So Noam, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Let everybody know that we'll be sending out a link to the recording of this program. If there are other people you think that might benefit from watching it, you could send that YouTube link to them. You'll be getting it either tomorrow or the next day. And please spread that around, or maybe there were parts of this program that you want to look at again yourself. And we have this tremendous resource at American Friends Service Committee that can give us the lists of the weapon systems that are being used, who's making those weapon systems. We'll be sending you a link to their page so you can look up a particular company, you can look up a particular weapon like this damn F-35 that is just wreaking havoc on people in Gaza. And most of the major military contractors are making pieces of that, at least, whether that's the engines or the bombs or the everything else that goes into these horrifying death machines. So all that information is available at the American Friends, at this Investigate website. And we'll be trying to, I'm hoping, I must have the link to that, Noam, but maybe you can send it to me again. I want to make sure I get that out tomorrow too, okay?
Thank
So
you so
thanks,
much.
everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Good night now.